So before we go any further, I want to discuss more about the order of operations and how this goes. And so I am literally in the middle of building this customer's Galil. It is a Galishnikov. It is one of our Galils, but it's chambered in 7.62 by 39, and you can use any of your AKM mags, rock and locks, and so magazines are easy to find, and you can use your 7.62 by 39 cartridges. Okay, so where I am at is we have a Tortort receiver. We have one of our barrels, and at this point, the very first thing, we have riveted in our bullet guide. That's the first thing. Next, we have installed our barrel. It is torqued to spec. Barrel is done. It is where it is going to be. It's not coming back out. At least it's not planned to. But it is now permanent fixture. We now have a barreled action. Okay. The very next thing that we do here, that I do here, is we need to check, just do an interim check on our headspace now that our barrel is installed and it is torqued. Now this chamber is fixed. It's not going anywhere. So our bolt is the variable here. That is the varying factor. Okay, so now we take a no-go gauge and we'll install it in the chamber. We install our bolt and we have this lug. The lug that rides on the underside of our bolt carrier will be 12 o'clock. It's going to face straight up. So we'll stick our bolt in the rails. This is where the bolt rides. And then we're going to push it all the way forward and attempt to turn it into battery. Now, battery for the bolt, this lug will rotate over to where this lug is touching or almost touching the top of the receiver. Okay, that would be into battery. On a no-go gauge, this should not go into battery, and it doesn't. So we can push it all the way forward, but we go to turn and lock the bolt. Now what's happening is our lugs are lining up, and that's what is locking our chamber closed. And but if it does go into battery on the no-go gauge, that's a stopping point. We're done here. We can't go any further. If you have one of our barrels, at that point, you contact us, we'll get you squared away. But that is what we first need to check and make sure that our no-go gauge does not go into battery. So that's the first thing. Then we take our go gauge. We put our go gauge in there and we do the exact same thing. And we attempt to put it into battery. So we push it all the way forward and we go to rotate the bolt, and nothing's really happening. Well, that's right, because we need to force match it. But that is where I am at, okay? And I know a lot of you have had some questions about this, so maybe we can make this, clear as mud. So this is where I like to lap an action, okay? If we're going to lap the action, all right? And that's a personal choice for you, whatever. So we have, in this case, man, you can get these at Napa Auto Parts. All right, just they have metal grinding compound. It's basically a grease with silicon carbide. It's got some grit in there. There is a coarse grade and a fine grade, and so we want to start with the coarse. Start coarse, work our way to fine. And I've actually already done the course, but that's actually what gave me the idea to make this video and kind of share this, because I've had this conversation with multiple people, customers, and just it's almost daily. I get questions from you guys, and it's understandable. How do I do this? Or I'm at this point, or maybe I'm building, and I get it. Cool. Sometimes I can help. Other times I can't really share all of my trade secrets, but I try to do what I can. So we lap in the action, all right? And let me kind of glance by that, and then I'll kind of show you some lapping in action. So we lap in the action before we headspace, because this is metal grinding compound. It's removing material. And if you go too crazy with this, I've seen guys that they lap and lap and lap and lap and lap, and it's like you realize this is getting everywhere a lot of times, okay? You'll squeeze a bunch of this stuff in there and you don't really have a whole lot of control over where it goes, especially if you're just lapping like crazy. So what are you doing? If you go too crazy or overboard with the lapping, you are just making a sloppy action. You are removing not just material from the back of the lugs or, you know, kind of true, because the lapping is making these parts kind of work together. These parts haven't gone together before, all right? So, you know, we're just kind of giving them a handshake and kind of accelerating the wear process. We're wearing them in. But if you continue to wear them in, now you've just removed and changed your tolerances on a bunch of these surfaces, and now it's just sloppy. Okay, don't want that. So yes, lap, but I don't lap too much. But if you headspace, once you achieve headspace, you've now said it goes into battery and it closes on a go gauge, and it does not close on a no-go gauge, all right? There is about a 4 to 5 thousandths difference in those gauges. And so you've hit this window, you're at this tolerance, and then you go and squeeze in and lap your action. Well, now you've changed and you've removed more material, so now you may end up in a situation where now it closes on a no-go gauge as well, and now you're getting closer to that loose chamber and it's making it an unsafe condition. Okay, so we want to lap the action, and where I like to lap the action is at the very beginning. I want to wear some of these components in together, some of these surfaces that need to work together. We're going to give them that handshake, and a lot of times I'm going to work the coarse grade in, and then from there, and it all just kind of depends. I can't give you a hard and fast, this is exactly where it is. Experience will also tell you, and I know that might not help all of you here, but I want to force match the last little bit, okay? And that means then that you also need to be, you know, checking this. If it looks like it's going into battery, you know, then you need to be checking with your go, no-go gauges. That being said, you've got to clean out all of that grit because you don't want it on your go and no-go gauges, right? Because then you change those tolerances and now you're having all kinds of problems. So, we lap in the action, then we headspace. Once we have headspaced our barrel and our action here, we've got everything headspaced, then we can continue with the rest of the build. Why is that important? Why does that matter? But Jeremy, I want to wait until the very end. I want to go ahead and build my gun, and then I'll headspace it at the end. Okay, that is one option. I will tell you what could happen. Okay, so let's say we skip headspacing, we just leave it to the gods, and we continue on with our build. Well, the next thing that would happen in real life, we go ahead and we get our headspace. The very next thing is we begin to populate our barrel. And from there, we would need to cut in our slot for our handguard retainer. Once we have fitted our handguard, and I've shown you guys how to do that in a previous video, once we have the handguard good to go, then we can go forward and with populating the barrel, and then we can worry about our drilling our gas port and installing or pressing on our gas block. Now, let's talk about gas block for a minute. This gas block is not the same as your AKs, okay? Many of you might have noticed that there's a lot more surface area and contact being made on these gas blocks. They're a little bit longer, okay, than many of your AK gas blocks, or even the different variants. I won't get into all that, but the point is, even with our smooth surface condition, you know, if you look at some of your AK barrels and, you know, some of the way these barrels are made, they look all pretty and everything, but take your thumbnail and run them across the surface of that metal, and it feels like the surface of a file. okay? You'll feel like teeth. It's like ribbed, not for her pleasure, okay? And that's why when you go and you're doing a lot of your pressing, like when you're pressing to Headspace your AK barrels, when you're pressing, you know, populating your AKs, that's why they pop, you know, because they're having to overcome that surface tension from the dissimilar surface conditions on the barrel, because the barrel's so rough. Well, our barrels are not rough. They're nice and smooth, so your pressing should go rather smoothly. However, the gas block is not the same, and you know those little dissimilarities. I have a different setup in how I press Galil gas blocks than how I press AK gas blocks. Okay, I won't exactly share here how that's done, but I will say it is different, or I do it differently. But the secret I will tell you is that gas block, the pressure applied when you're pressing that gas block has to be on the same axis as the barrel. It has to press straight down. If that pressure is dissimilar, okay, and it's canted as you go to press it in any direction, all 360 degrees, if that gas block has dissimilar pressure on it, what it'll do is it'll bite. It'll bite in if it's canted, and it doesn't matter. All you're doing then is you're pressing, but it's all focused on where it's biting, okay, and it'll just freeze. You know, and so I know that can affect some of you guys depending on how your setups are, or you know, the tooling, or you know, your capabilities as far as your shop. And but that's the deal. All right. So now we get our gas block front sight combo, installed, and then, you know, you've got your whole gun built and everything. So from there, I like to save the trigger guard for last. Why? Because when I'm putting this into my tooling, I don't have my trigger guard in the way. Okay, so I do trigger guard last. So I populate everything on the barrel first before I do that. Now, that's it. Let's say you get everything all put together, and then you're like, okay, I've got my nice pretty Galil, and you're all happy and proud of it and everything, and now you want to do the headspace. I'm just going to go ahead and finish this up, and I'm going to do the headspacing, and we'll be good to go. Well, let's say then that you throw in your no-go gauge, and you go to check it, and oh man, it closes on the no-go gauge. Because at that point, in order to fix it, we have to pull the barrel. Now, this isn't pressed straight in. This is threaded. It twists, which means we've got everything at the very 12 o'clock top position, you know, that we've populated. But then we went and we removed the barrel. And I will tell you from personal experience that when you go to reinstall that barrel, it might, you know, as hard as you may try, if you're hitting that same torque, you're getting that same torque measurement, a lot of times, or sometimes, you may go just 1/2 degree. It might not be perfectly center again. And if you're like me, that might drive you nuts, okay? So save yourself the headache, do the head spacing first. The other, and when I talk about it closing on the no-go gauge, let's say you're not accustomed to force matching bolts. You're used to just pressing to headspace, like with the AKs. And maybe you get a little overzealous on your lapping, or you get a little overzealous with your with your lug adjustment, and then it closes on your no-go gauge. Same. You have to pull the barrel now, and you know, in order to fix it. So that is why it is important we install the bullet guide, we install and torque our barrel, then we worry about getting it properly head spaced. Then we have the option to lap. Okay.